What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Scott DeLong, CEO Podcast. I'm here again with Vince Moiso. This happens to be our last episode for season 2.
Yeah.
So I think number 26 is what it is.
Crazy.
It's gone pretty fast, and we've got a lot of content going on. So today, what I thought we'd talk about is a subject that I've been talking a lot more about lately than usual, and that's the creation of what's called psychological safety. A guy named Dr. Timothy Clark wrote a book called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, and I'll give you kind of an outline of what that is, but then we'll put our take on it.
Yep.
I'm not just into taking somebody's point of view and just going with it, right? So we had to make a twist based on our personalities and how we do things. So there's really, he calls it the 4 stages. And the first one is inclusion, making sure that people feel welcome, right? Making that happen so that, and he talks about it in a form of different cultures, diversity and all that, and making all those folks welcome.
Right.
So, and in the business world, I see it even a little differently. So what I like to do is work on cross-functional work groups quite often. Mm-hmm. My theory on that is when we make changes, it's not just a change that's good for my department, but I need to work with the people that come before me and the people that come after me in the process to make sure I'm not screwing them up too, right? So we bring those people into the meeting. And therefore it's not just a sales meeting or a customer service meeting or an operations meeting or a finance meeting.
Right.
It is a company meeting. It's one of the ways to start bringing silos down and finding a way for people that think differently to feel part of that group is really important.
Sure.
So what's your experience on making that happen? What do you folks do in your organization to welcome those, or do you spend the time to do that?
Yeah, that's an easy answer for me. Before I jump into that, let's give some context into what we are talking about.
Sure.
And I think within an organization, I'm thinking in life in general, but within an organization, I think as you're in a meeting, could be any meeting, could be external or internal, right? And it's how do you handle the psychology around that meeting
of whoever's there.
I mean, and it could be from a negotiation because you might be looking at a sales contract, or it might just be a meeting with an existing client. It could be internal. I mean, just the dynamics change so much in the business world that you have to understand the psychology around how meetings take place and ultimately transpire, and then how do you create an environment that's safe for everybody so that everybody feels comfortable.
So why safe? I guess maybe that's the part I missed, is why does it have to be safe?
Yeah, it has to be safe because I think, we've talked about this in communication.
Yep.
And we talk about the win-win scenario. And for everybody to feel comfortable that everyone's going to get what they want, the results that they want or the outcome that they want from that meeting, they have to feel safe, right? You have to come from a safe place in order to achieve an outcome where everybody wins.
Yeah. So I'll say it a little bit different. Same thing, just a little bit different. I think if you want to get the truth, they need to feel safe.
Yeah.
If you want to build trust, they need to feel safe.
Well, and if you want someone to be vulnerable, then be vulnerable, right? It's all of those things. It's this concept of reciprocity. So when I see that you're safe, I'm going to be safe. When I see that you're comfortable, I'm going to be comfortable. When you smile, I smile. It's that exchange of energy. But you asked me a great question because, how do we do it in our organization? Well, we own and operate a manufacturing facility down in Mexico. And so we literally have 2 different cultures in the business. And we've got, roughly about 30 plus employees in the United States. And then we've got 200 to 300 employees down in Mexico at any given time. And that fluctuates, right? And we've got a lot of leadership that's in Mexico. We've got a lot of leadership that's in the U.S. And really everything in between from management to otherwise. And when I came into the business roughly 6+ years ago, there was a big divide there was this. It was Mexico versus U.S.
Us versus them.
Yeah, honestly, one of the first things I was involved with is they actually had this sporting event, this picnic, and it was U.S. versus Mexico. And we had volleyball, and we had basketball, and we had soccer, and it was really interesting to me that just this whole dynamic that was unintentionally created.
Sure.
Right, very unintentionally created.
Sounds like a good idea.
Well, and then there's this, there's this trophy that sits in a case that reminds everybody of the divide of the U.S. won, Team USA, right? And we had uniforms that separated. I mean, Scott, I could go on and on at just anecdotally how this thing just created this natural divide. And then, that culture ran through on a week-to-week basis, because you could hear it in the speak when the sales team got together, as an example, or management got together. It was always around, Mexico's doing this again, and, Mexico's doing this. And then you could hear Mexico, the team in Mexico, saying, U.S. is doing that, U.S. is doing this, and it's a sales
Even
problem.
with all the different personalities and different job functions within the U.S., they were saying the U.S. as one entity.
Completely.
Right? Or you would do the same thing?
Yeah, it was like literally, it
wasn't
even a division of the company, right? Where, hey, this is just a subdivision. No. It was literally U.S. versus Mexico. I mean, on a day-to-day basis. And I really sought out to just rip that culture apart. We've never repeated that.
So what kind of techniques did you do to rip that apart?
Well, one thing is you got to get rid of the things that divide you, right? And one of those was that event, which again unintentionally created a divide. So that was immediately eliminated. And then when you have meetings, inclusion that you talked about is the number one thing. So I found that, some of the team in Mexico was not being included in really critical management meetings and leadership meetings. We need to stop that immediately and make sure that critical people are a part of those meetings, and you start to come together. Then you get rid of language. You know from me on many podcasts how I talk about how important language is. Well, think of it this way. We actually have two actual cultures in the business, because we've got a team in Mexico whose first language is Spanish, and we got a team in the U.S. whose first language is English. So we already have this barrier to overcome where language is so important. But do you think anybody was taking any care toward that? Not really, right? So you have to understand that in Spanish. So
not just the Spanish language, but the meaning is different too.
Well, or their understanding of the word, of any given word. And so if you send an email, for example, maybe it's not translated the way that you meant it. Talking about email etiquette, you're talking about communication matters, language matters, right? And the interpretation of that. So it's really, really important. So we made sure that on both sides that not only were we more inclusive, we understood that the delicate nature of language and how things can get translated. So we're over communicating. Another thing you've heard us talk about many, many times, and we've had Mark Kohler as a guest, is one of the biggest reasons that we're such big fans of Lead with Purpose and the one-page plan is the whole team gets to work off of a single document. Guess what it was like before? Everything was siloed. So, Mexico team had its own set of documents that they were working off of, and then of course the U.S. team had its own set of documents that it was working off of. So that's just a peek into it. I could keep going for the next 30 minutes of this podcast, but we did some very, very, very distinct action items to make sure that we were inclusive as one team, and it was no longer Mexico versus U.S. And that is incredibly critical to moving an organization forward.
Sure. So I'll tell you a couple things that I do. First of all, the whole concept of inclusion starts with making people feel welcome, making them feel welcome. So if I'm in a meeting, say I'm in a conference room, and when people are entering the room, I stand up to greet them.
Yeah.
Shake hands, do whatever the greeting of the day is, right? There's some people that like to hug, others don't, whatever, but make sure people are greeted in a way that makes them feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I do, and I do this intentionally, normally when you sit in a conference room, the person at the head of the table is the boss.
Yeah.
I purposely sit in the middle of the table when I'm in charge, right? Because symbolically, I'm wanting to hear people on my left and I'm wanting to hear people on my right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
It's not about me at the head. So there's just a couple physical things that I like to do as well, because I think this part matters. Make people feel comfortable. Make them feel included. They're welcome to be there. So that's the first
power
step.
move, right?
Sure.
I love what you said there, because sitting at the head of the table is often a power move.
Yeah.
We talk about that, right?
Sure, and I get a taller chair and I throne and I
it's
have
no
my
different
crown.
even if you're having a
Yeah.
one-on-one meeting, and we talked about this before, is
Yes.
understanding your physical positioning. And so if I have this desk and I'm going to sit,
That's right.
here, and I'm going to make you sit there, I've established power. Right?
So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. So that's a group meeting, right? That's sit in the center. But if I'm meeting with you or somebody else, right? And especially a subordinate, someone that's working for me, in my office, which already might be a little intimidating coming to the boss's office.
Yeah.
I will get out from across from my desk and I'll sit side by side or straight across from them. The goal there is to minimize or equalize power, right? Because what I want is the truth. The bigger the power difference, the less truth is going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's all about psychological safety. So let's go to step 2, the second stage, which is learning safety. What that to me means is the ability to ask dumb questions. Why are people asking a dumb question? Because they don't know the answer to it. Do I want them to know the answer to these seemingly simple concepts, things that we've been doing for years, whatever? Yeah, I want them to know that.
Hey, hint, listeners, there are no dumb questions.
No. They're asking because they don't know, and you want them to know.
You know what? I really, one of my biggest pet peeves, and this happens often, and how many are you going to relate to this? When you're in a meeting and somebody says, when you ask for questions, they go, I have a stupid question. And I literally stopped them right there and I said, you know what? I wish you wouldn't say that, because there are no stupid questions. There's no dumb questions. You're asking a question because you don't know the answer to it. That makes it a very good question.
It sounds like a cliche answer, but it's not. It is. There are no dumb questions. We need people to know, to be on the same page, to have the same set, the baseline understanding of the thing that we're talking about. If I'm talking an acronym, if you're brand new to the company, I'm talking using acronyms that we've been using for 20 years in the company, and you don't know, you're lost already.
Yeah.
Why did I hire you? Because I need your brain. Why did I ask you in this meeting? Because I need your brain too.
Yeah.
Why would I want to talk about something you don't know anything about? Yeah. So no, there are no dumb questions.
There aren't. No, in fact, that's just a self-deprecating comment. Is typically where that's coming from.
Yeah. So the other part of that though is your body language is going to play a big part in this one, right? So I've seen people ask questions where other folks in the room roll their eyes, like, oh my gosh, that kind of feeling, like that person doesn't know that. No, they don't know it. That's why they're asking.
Yeah.
So stop doing that to folks. Stop making them feel insecure about trying to catch up to the rest of the team.
Well, in fact, if you don't welcome them or welcome the question, then the next time they're not going to ask it, because they're going to feel very embarrassed. And that's the last thing that you want somebody to feel, is that they're embarrassed to ask that question because they were made to feel bad the previous time they asked a question.
So if they don't feel safe, they won't talk.
Yeah.
They'll sit in the back. So those are only 2 steps. The third step is the psychological safety of contributing safety. Yeah. What does that mean? That means being able to throw wacky ideas out there, right? Or ideas that aren't mainstream. I think about a story that I talk about all the time about, we talk about the ham story at all before? Ever tell you this story?
No.
Okay. So there's this.
I have a feeling you're going to tell me right now.
I'm going to. I'm not really entertaining, so I'm going to do my best here.
Okay, everybody, you're getting the ham story.
You're getting the ham story. So there was a Easter dinner, and the mom and the daughter were in the kitchen preparing it.
Yeah.
And the mom puts the ham out, and she starts cutting off this end of the ham and this end of the ham. And the daughter says, "Mom, what's that about? Why do we cut off the end of the ham?" And Mom said, "Well, I don't know. It's the way my mom taught me to do it. We just cut off the end of the ham before we bake it, right?" Grandma's in the other room. Let's go ask her why we do that. So they went in. Grandma, hey, Mom's cutting off the ends of the ham. Why do we do that? Grandma says, I don't know. That's the way my mom taught me. She's in the bedroom right now. Let's go ask her. So the 3 of them walk in there, and they said, Great Grandma, Mom's cutting off the end of the ham. She doesn't know why she's doing it. She just knows she's supposed to. Grandma didn't know the reason. Why did we cut off the ends of the hams before we bake it? She goes, well, 40 years ago, my oven was only 14 inches wide. The ham didn't fit. So we keep doing things because the way we used to do them. So why do we need new people in the building? Why do we need them to know things? Why do we need them to be able to contribute and maybe make crazy suggestions, off-the-wall suggestions, so we don't cut off the ends of the ham?
Yeah.
Just because we've always done that.
No, that's why we need people to ask questions. I feel like, contribution is so critical in meetings, and really when we talk about the subject of inclusion, I think inclusion and contribution go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the practices that we've incorporated is when we have our weekly management meetings, which we've discussed in the past, as we review everything that's on Lead with Purpose and where we need help, we have a different person lead that meeting every week. And that means that everybody has to speak up. And then as we go through by assignee. So what we used to do is we'd go by department, which meant that there was maybe one person speaking for a department, and now we go by assignee. And
they have to speak about their own thing.
So yeah. The idea is great. We need to know where you need help, right? And so there's a different leader each week, and then everybody's got to really talk about what they've got going on. And that's really important because everyone has contribution. You can't hide in the meeting. And, man, I tell you, just that alone has elevated communication within our business to a level I never thought it could get within an organization. So you've got everybody who's not afraid to jump in, and they feel very safe and free to speak and offer.
So when you linked the contribution and inclusion together, it brought up another story for me, and it was something.
Oh, great! I love stories from you, Scott.
So this happened with an organization that brought me in to teach the communication protocol, and they had multiple offices.
Yeah.
So they had 2 offices at the time, one in Dallas and one in Southern California. Southern California was the corporate office, had the most people in the room. We had, I think, 6 employees in the room there, plus me. And then via Zoom, we brought in 3 people from Dallas, and they were sitting up there on the screen. And this was really helpful for me to learn how to do this during the pandemic. But we're going through the meeting, and after about the 4th meeting, I was starting to realize that I'm talking to the people across the desk from me, and the people up on the screen were getting ignored. So I finally turned to them and I said something. I said, hey, what about whatever, right? And they said, oh, really? I said, well, does this happen to you often? He goes, yeah, all the time. We get ignored all the time. In fact, they used the word stepchildren. They felt like the proverbial stepchild because they got to participate, but they weren't participating. They got to listen, but not participate. So inclusion, making sure that we talk to the people on the screen and not just them, but everybody, allows for contribution.
Well, and
because once we changed that, boy, they were engaged. They really loved that portion.
That's a relevant story. That's a good story. Good
That's
job.
better than the ham story?
Nice job. Nice job. No, the ham story's good.
Okay.
Well done on both.
All right.
That's so relevant today because now, we've had multiple podcasts talking about this remote environment. So more and more, you've got organizations that have a ton of employees that are remote that are going to come into meetings that are hybrid meetings where you've got people that are live and in person, and then you've got people that are virtual. And you've got to find ways to be totally inclusive, and you got to find ways to allow them to contribute at a high level. We ran into that.
Or they'll shut down.
They will shut down. Well, in fact, we ran into that recently. We had our sales on site, mid-year sales on site, and so I had, my inside team was remote, and my outside team, the regional account manager.
That sounds backwards, doesn't it? Inside team remote, outside team local.
Yeah, so they're all regional accordingly. So without going down a rabbit hole to give more context to that, but we had a certain amount that was live and a certain amount that was virtual, and the first day. It was very difficult for those people that were virtual to be included. and to contribute, and they shut down and in fact complained that they didn't get, they didn't really hear everything.
Yeah.
The next day we fixed it. We fixed not only the microphone, the speaker, so they could be heard. We made sure that we did some rules of engagement during communications. There weren't multiple people talking at the same time. You weren't loud. You didn't have a bunch of background noise. All the things I guess that I wish I would have thought of for the first day.
Sure.
To really think of the details around how can I make it more inclusive so that they can contribute at a high level. And that is the details around the microphone so that they can hear clearly. Because if Scott, if you're sitting over there and we're trying to record a podcast, no one's going to hear you, right?
And my great stories.
And your great stories. But you get my point, is making sure that the group is together, not overly spread out, that only one person is speaking at a time, that you don't have 3 and 4 people speaking, because the person that is virtual is not going to be able to hear all of that. And so those are just little details in this new world that we're living in, which is this hybrid model that we've talked about. And
it's extra work on the facilitator.
It is.
Because you have to pay attention to the people in the room.
But you got to do it.
But you've got to pay attention to the people out there as well, because and you're looking for the facial reaction. In the room, you can tell people's bodies moving, they're wanting to talk, they're ready. You can tell. Yeah. But on the virtual side, you have to look for the facial cues that says somebody has something. And as the facilitator, what I try to do at that point is stop and say, "Hey, Sally, you looked like you had something to say," right? And invite them in, right? Back to the inclusion piece. Invite them in the group, because we don't. If they're going to be shut down anyway, just turn the TV off. We don't need them, right? Yeah. And that's not the case. We do need them. So the inclusion, learning, contributing, safety, and then the fourth one, and this one is for those of us with lead jobs, and that is challenging. They need to feel safe to be able to challenge the process, to be able to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Why do we do X, Y, or Z, whatever it is that we're talking about? Yeah. Isn't there a better way? What if we did this? What if we tried? Those kind of questions. To be able to challenge the process, challenge the boss, challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Because who wants to do the same thing every single day? Well, business does, because remember, that's efficient. Doing things the same way every single time, and those things are efficient. But what we really want is effectiveness. And how can we be more effective? Start listening to these people that have a different way. I go back to the old saying that, here I am at the head of the table, the boss, the person that knows everything, and I guarantee you the janitor knows what broom to use much better than I do.
Yeah.
The person doing the work is the one that has the ideas, and if you don't allow them to challenge that process, you're stuck with those same old ideas.
Yeah.
And a less happy employee.
I think that boils down to empowerment, and we've talked about that many times on several podcasts, and I think it just boils down to, if you're truly empowering your employees to do their job, they're going to feel very comfortable to challenge processes and systems and bring that up in meetings. And so I think you can create that environment. But the challenging part for me, and I'm referring to challenging with regards to the 4 stages of psychological safety, is part of culture. So it's a lot more work, right? Because if you're going to create that safe environment for people to feel comfortable to challenge the status quo, or to ask those questions and to offer solutions or alternatives, that culture, you have to work hard at that culture of empowerment.
But that is our job, right? As a leader, that is the job. You're no longer typing the letter. You're no longer, pushing the broom. You're no longer putting the things in the machine, pulling the lever. You're not doing those things, right? So what is your job? Your job is to be able to create that culture. And I was going to say enforce it, but that's not the real, model it. Model the behavior that you're looking to see.
Sure.
So allowing, and again, this goes back to the body language. I mean, I know I've worked really hard at, and haven't mastered it, but I've worked really hard at, when I hear negative information about me in particular, my face turns red. I haven't been able to stop that. I wish I could, because I don't like hearing it, but I want to hear the stuff that I need to hear. But if somebody sees my smoke coming out my ears, you think they're going to come and say that?
No.
That feeling that risk? So it really does take, And you go back to the emotional intelligence piece, right? And doing some of the mindfulness techniques and the breath work and doing some of that is when I'm about to hear something that I've done wrong or could do better, or somebody thinks I had a way to do better, just take a deep breath and hear it.
Well, you bring up a great point, and I go back to when we talked about communication, and this is way back, but in first season, part 1 and 2, we talked about listening.
Yeah.
And one of the most common ways to listen is to listen to defend.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment that somebody challenges something, if you're listening to defend and you're cutting them off, and you're oftentimes just defending your position,
having all the yeah-buts,
holding strongs, and
right.
All of that, then you're not creating a safe environment for people to speak their mind. And I've been vulnerable on the show many times, happy to continue to be that, and I was a bad manager, and I there was a time when it hit me over the head like a sledgehammer, and somebody had to come and tell me. I said, why haven't you shared this with me before? And they just immediately said, because you're intimidating.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because I wasn't listening. I was listening to defend my position every single time. So I was so hell bent on making you see my way of it that I wasn't willing to listen to being challenged, or challenging a process, or challenging the system, or a new idea, or anything like that. When my mind opened, and I was really willing to listen, it was amazing, and it is amazing what can come from it.
Well, I'll tell you where it took me a while to figure that out. In fact, I wasn't even aware that I was being the opposite of what I'm professing right now. But the thing that helped me learn that was, and it really did require this, it took a peer to challenge me. Because had an employee said, you're not listening, I would have been defensive at that point. But it took a peer. So the EO groups is where I started noticing in myself the things that I can do a better job. And the only reason I did, and I'm fortunate to have to say this, the only reason that I did is because that was a peer telling me, not a subordinate. Because I don't think I was at a spot where a subordinate telling me would have caught my attention nearly as well as somebody that I considered at my level at the time. And that's a huge flaw. Hopefully it's been corrected, but a group like EO certainly helped me do that. And it was powerful since I've been able to learn how.
I think one of the best things you could do in an organization is create this safe environment for people to challenge everything within the business and feel comfortable to do it.
Yeah.
And will all every idea work? No, of course not. Nope. But they should feel free to bring up that idea, and you'll be amazed at what comes of it. So I think that's an important part of this. This 4 stages. So
I think we talked a little bit before about the concept of brainstorming, and really that's what that is. That's diverging, going wide, and getting all these crazy ideas out there, and then converging on what's going to work for us, right? Yeah. And I think we're talking about that. The problem is if you don't create that psychological safety, whether it's within a group, a team, whatever. In fact, you will never become a team from a group if you don't create that.
Yeah.
And you won't get that diversion. You won't get all of these wild, crazy ideas. And one of them may just be it, right? Yeah. Or some variation of that wild, crazy idea becomes the thing that we're going to go on. And you're never going to hear it if you sit there in that, what you called intimidating position, at the head of the table, dictating, not facilitating. Yeah. So that's one of my things that I like to talk to about groups and how to create a great meeting is understand your role. You're the leader, you're a facilitator. You're not a dictator. Otherwise, don't have a meeting. Just do what you want to do.
Right.
I don't need 12 people, 10 people, 8 people for me to tell them what to do. I can send a memo out to those folks.
Exactly.
Get a meeting so I can get them. And if I don't create that safety, I'm not going to get that. So let's talk about one other thing that at the beginning of meetings, and we've probably talked about this as well. But at the beginning of the meeting, one of the things, besides talking about the purpose and sitting at the middle of the table instead of the end, one of the things that I like to do is let people know how decisions are going to be made with this group at this time. And there's 4 ways of doing that. Sometimes it's command and control. And it's, listen, folks, I got to make the decision. It's on my shoulders, and I'm going to say what we're going to do.
Sure.
Another way is to say, I'm going to get all your input, then I need to make the decision because, again, it's on my shoulders. So those are 2 different ways. The third way is to work towards consensus. More difficult, takes longer
Yeah.
and gets buy-in a lot better from the entire group if we
No
can get
question.
to consensus. And consensus meaning something we can all support, not necessarily something everyone agrees on, but at least we can agree to support. And the fourth way is to vote. And I'm going to hold off votes for presidential elections and where we go to lunch. And that's
What
about
about
it.
letting them decide?
Well, sure. If depends how much risk is personally on me if I can do that or not, right?
I try to do that more and more. I ask that because more and more, again, in the spirit of empowerment, and I think.
But how do they decide now? Four against three vote, or is it like consensus? I mean, when you say that,
well, it might be somebody. It might be one individual. It might be the four of them. I've been in both situations where I'm talking one-on-one with somebody, and I say, hey, and they're looking for me to make a decision, and I say, really, that's your decision. I think I'll support whatever decision you make, and I think that's what they need to hear. And that's a one-on-one situation. But I've been in the situation where I'm on a call with three people, and we're working toward consensus, or all three of them are looking at me to make a decision. So they're giving me input, and then I'll turn around and say, you know what? I'd like the three of you to make the decision. I think you guys are fully capable of making the right decision, and I'm going to support what you guys come up with. You guys know it better. I mean, you use the analogy of whatever that person, the janitor and the broom, right? Like, or whatever the person is in their role is going to know it better than me. And I think I've really become comfortable in understanding that people aren't going to do it exactly the way that I do it. People are going to do it differently, and they're going to do it their way, and their way is better than mine, frankly, because whatever it is that they're doing, they know it better than I do. And so, I've walked away and said, hey, I'd like all three of you guys to make that decision, and you're fully capable of doing that.
Yeah, I did that poorly one time. We were working on, with my company, I was learning new things, and I thought, I'm going to try this. So I brought everyone together, and I said, okay, we're going to start working on a new mission statement, and we're going to work on our vision, and we're going to work on our core values. And I left the room. And there was a revolt in that room. The person that had been in the company the longest said, I've been living like this for so long, expecting these things, and you walk out on us? Like, oh my gosh. I was trying to give you power to do things. Anyways, it's a matter of how you accomplish these things as well.
Well, it's an evolution, right?
Sure.
And so that, when I give that example, to your point, that didn't happen right away.
If it did, you would have had that same problem I had.
I would have. And so it has been. That's a great analogy that you give. That anecdote is perfect because it is an evolution. It does take time. It is, that to truly bring empowerment into a culture is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And even what we're talking about here, I think you can apply this psychology of safety to meetings and stuff that you can do immediately. But there's components of this, like the challenging component, and even inclusion, that takes a long time.
You have to be able to show it, not just say it.
That's absolutely right.
It's your actions, not your words, that are going to matter.
You can't be all of this in a meeting and then not be all of that in your company.
That's right. You got to be consistent with the application and model the behavior that you're hoping to see if you want this to succeed. Well, listen, we've already gone a half hour. That's been pretty. That didn't seem that long.
No, that was easy. That's a great conversation. I think it relates to so many things that we've talked about in the past on other podcasts, Scott. It brings it all together in a way that I think is easy to understand. So why don't you just quickly repeat the 4 stages of psychological safety so that the listeners know and understand that, and they can really walk away with something that they could potentially put into practice tomorrow.
So I'll give another shout out to Dr. Timothy Clark. The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety is the book. If you want to pick it up and read it, great. If not, the 4 stages are these. They need to feel inclusion. They need to feel safety in learning. They need to feel safety in contributing, and they need to feel safety in challenging. If any of those components are missing, you are not going to get the full truth. You're not going to get the full benefit of the knowledge within that room. If you think you are, you're wrong.
Or full buy-in, or all the things that you discuss. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great topic.
And let's go and having those things without people having fear of embarrassment, being called out, without fear of punishment, any negative attributions, or even marginalized. Right. So those are things that we want to eliminate, that fear Fear and safety are kind of opposite, right? The antonyms of each other. So eliminate the fear of embarrassment, punishment, marginalization. Be inclusive. Allow them to learn. Allow them to contribute, and allow them to challenge, and you'll be okay.
Perfectly said.
All right. Hey, it's been a great season. Had a lot of fun with the conversations. I enjoyed most of our guests. Actually, all of our guests. I think all of you. We loved all that. So thank you.
I personally, just for the record, I loved all of you.
Yeah, Vince loved them all too. Okay.
I thought we had some great guests, and I would encourage everybody to go back and, if you missed any of our guest episodes, go back and listen. Man, some of them are so great. And I really appreciate the guests taking the time to join us for this season. And frankly, I'm looking forward to next season because we've already got a few guests lined up. We've got some topics that we've already been working on for next season. So
maybe in some more controversial topics.
Yeah,
some things that people might raise an eyebrow to, but we're going to give a different point of view.
Yeah.
So that you can get at least an understanding. So next season is going to be pretty powerful. It's going to be short. We're going to take a little bit of a break and come back at the end of August. So there'll be some things happening in between. There's some short episodes and things like that. But we'll come back in August and probably be a much more intense conversations. We will have some difference of opinions on some of the controversial subjects. We'll have some really cool guests too.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody listening. As always, check us out at the CEOpodcast.net. You can listen on all your favorite podcast channels, of course. Check us out on YouTube. We've got a lot of feedback from listeners that enjoy watching on YouTube, so you can
we're getting a lot more views now on YouTube than we had been in the past as well. So it's going to become a good medium for us.
Yeah, subscribe to our channel there. Just go on to YouTube and search the CEO Podcast or search Scott DeLong or Vince Moiso, and please subscribe and check us out there. And
give us a rating, give us a review too. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. You can send us an email, scottandvince@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Or either of our personal emails. We get people sending those as well. We want to hear what kind of topics you want to hear as well.
Till next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.